Hello there! I'm very most probably not going to die, and this makes life very pleasant. However, this email begins its recounting prior to that verdict, so just keep that in mind as you read the first few days. Sunday, I, as is my holy and established routine, went to church. Then, I joined the Southgate people as we all gathered around a lone table and we did the big squeeze. The conversation was fairly lackluster. Not much occurred. But Joe seemed fairly insistent I stay nonetheless, so I obliged him. However, eventually, a few people left, and thus I too left in pursuit of a greater use of my time, namely, the reading of an expansive metaphysics anthology. I then basically just read my anthology till dinner before taking a night walk downtown. I observed all the partiers and mused about the oddities that must be going on inside their heads for them to act this way. After that, I had Grace start reading Chuck Black's Angel book, the name of which I can't remember, and she really liked it and got hooked, So now she has finally come to realize reading is fun. The next day, I studied some philosophy, played 2 games of chess with the Indian guy that was staying at our house. Dad knew him through Nexus somehow, and he needed a place to stay on the way to the college he was going to, so we housed him for a few days. Of course, I won both games quite handily. Wink. I then went on a drive with music and just waited to see if people were free to hang, because I was definitely feeling socially starved. Joe then got back to me and came over, and we had a 4-hour conversation that was honestly one of my favorites thus far. I discovered that there was a whole dimension of conversation Joe and I hadn't explored because, Joe being dominant SI, he has a very good grip on and deeply enjoys talking about the past. Hence, because I suck at remembering things, XD, I was able to basically ask him questions about what happened when and why, and the conversation was super interesting. Honestly, very fun. The big takeaway is that my involvement in shaping the course of how things went down was as big as I thought it was, but only in the areas I deemed important. E.g., yeah, I made a big difference, but I didn't objectively make as big a difference as I thought I did because there were other aspects that play in the past that I just didn't care about, and thus didn't notice, that nevertheless were quite influential for others. Though, of course, I don't really mind that because I still don't think those aspects are all that important, XD. But still, it was cool to get Joe's perspective on it all, and also very interesting to adjust my perspective appropriately. After Joe headed back, I then proceeded to stall for a bit before eating Nepali food with the family and the Indian guy, which is honestly just such good food. Though why Dad was insistent upon feeding the Indian guy knockoff versions of his own cuisine is something I don't quite understand. Like, wouldn't he want to eat American food? Regardless, it was great food. I then went on a night walk with Neo, and we talked about a host of things. He had some tough calls to make, so we talked about those. ENFJs, man, I have things to say, but I'm not going to say them, The only other thing that happened that night was a brief conversation with Liam, and then more philosophy study for an hour and a half or so before bed. The next day was the day before the big scary test, so Johanna and Grace agreed to distract me for the day. After I woke up, Grace took her car over to the Myers, and we picked up Johanna and drove to Estes. Once there, we stopped at a Safeway, grabbed some sushi, and then started hiking to this lake, but then Grace was like, I don't wanna, So we turned around. To be fair, though, I lost the trail, and so we were walking through shallow snow and just following the road, so that did make the hiking a bit less enjoyable, Also, during this whole time, I was working gradually through each of the MBTI functions and explaining them in as much depth as I could. Once again, my best explanation thus far. Each time I do this, I just get better at breaking MBTI theory down, XD. From there, we went to the Ink and Brew, where I kept ranting about MBTI theory, and we also read some inspiring cards. The quotes of which I pirated for my lines to live by, Doc. Wink. After that, we started our drive back, with me still talking about MBTI. As we were like 20 or so minutes from home, my speech started to slur, which I found both concerning and frustrating. Thus, we finished out the drive in silence. I think I had been talking about MBTI for like 4 hours straight. Well, pretty straight, XD. At that point, though, so that was the popular explanation as to why the speech slur occurred. Anyway, we decided it would be best to take a break from talking. I had Johanna teach Grace how to derive the cognitive functions from your type code. Here is a picture of that being undergone. See attachment. Then from there, with my mouth recovered, we spent another 2 hours or so, and I finally got them through all the cognitive functions. The biggest surprise for me, however, is how much Grace retained. Johanna took notes, and I just kind of expected her to retain a lot of it because, it's social knowledge. But Grace honestly remembered it all pretty well, too. It was literally the next day that she was already weaponizing her knowledge against Mom. XD, yeah, maybe I should be more prudential to whom I give the MBTI knowledge, ... Though to be fair, thus far she's used it fairly responsibly in other cases, ... After that, we spontaneously decided it would be a good idea to all go buy squishy balls, and honestly, that was a fantastic decision. I have used mine constantly just as a fidget toy, as I read and stuff. A very good purchase decision. I recommend you all go buy squishy balls. Whew. Upon doing that, we came back, stargazed, and while Grace investigated the nature of some obscure constellation, Johanna and I listened to Violet Evergarden music. I actually love listening to my perfect peaceful playlist while stargazing so much, ... It's just so beautiful to me. Then from there, we drove back to the Myers, dropped Johanna off, and then drove home. Overall, it was a very full day, and I was greatly distracted, so I appreciated it as well. The next day, I woke up at 7:30 and promptly began the lengthy drive to the Denver PET Scan Center. Once I got there, I got my PET scan, and this time my arms didn't fall asleep, which was so much nicer, XD, and then I just drove home. Upon getting back in Fort Collins, I picked up a free noodles mac and cheese I had and then watched Attack on Titan till Joe came over to distract me until the results came in. However, as soon as he got there, the hospital sent me an email with the results and I found out the chemo was working. Man, you don't understand just how great that feeling was. First it kind of came in stages. It wasn't all one big rush. It was more like, I'm not going to die. Wait, can I actually believe that? Oh yeah, I'm not just juking myself out. For realsies. I'm most probably not going to die. It was an odd phenomena. Of course, once I found out, I sent out an email telling all of you, and hence, for the next hour or so, I was quite preoccupied responding to you all being excited with me and also orchestrating a spontaneous celebration dinner, because clearly a celebration was in order. While the spontaneous dinner was percolating, Joe and I went over to Neo's house and played Magic the Conquest, Neo and my homebrew Magic game, until it was time to go back for the spontaneous dinner. From there, people began to arrive at my house, and after a number had gathered, I chose a group and we headed out early because the reservation lady said to do that. It was a bit of a drive because we were going to Wyoming, let's be honest. No place other than Stanford's would do this for such an occasion. Wink. But it was fun. Once we got there, we had to wait for ages for a table big enough to house all 20 or so of us to open up. But once it finally did, the experience was immaculate. Sanford's has actually such good food, and Alan got endless ribs, so I got to eat as much as I wanted of those, so that made it also quite good. Besides the food, though, it was just really cool to see everyone show up like they did for me, and also just all the fun conversations that happened. Honestly, it was really great. I genuinely have a fantastic community around me. Here's a pic of all of us. There's actually 2 pics. It was a fantastic time, and I'm super glad I did it and everyone came. On the way back, I switched up cars, and mostly Jake and I chatted till we got home. Once we all returned, people milled around the living room for a bit. The notion of stargazing was put forward and shot down, and then everyone left, leaving Alan, my Alan, as the lone remaining participant. He chatted with Mom and Dad a bit, and then eventually he too faded into the night, all being right with the world and a new hope welling up within my soul. After that, I chatted on Discord for a bit and slept. The next morning, I woke up and then basically as soon as that happened, Benj was over, XD. We spent some time doing our own things, me philosophy of course and him reading. We then devised a plan to go to Celestial Seasonings for tea tasting, because pre-chemo fast meant that was actually all about all the taste-related things that were still permissible for me, XD. Hence, we did that, and though we invited many, only Johanna joined us in the end. Still, it was honestly great. First, we got to listen to a bunch of Owl City songs in the car, which I always enjoy, and then we tasted 15 or so teas. Here's some pictures. And of course, our man himself clearly enjoying good tea. There's attachments. We then took a tour of how the tea was made, and it was mildly interesting. We bought stickers because Celestial Seasoning does this cool thing where the price of the tour ticket counts as store credit in their gift shop, so it's pseudo-free. And then from there, we drove to this cool-looking community center, which I remember from some distant part of my past, though I can't say which part of it, ... Only for their pool to be closed. So then we drove to another community center where we decided, given the time frame, to just head home because I had to be back in time to teach philosophy class. So yeah, a good way to spend the fasting day, though, to be sure. On the way back, I think I fell asleep and was awoken by Benj and Johanna singing Verge really loudly, XD. From there, I had some Discord conversations, taught philosophy class, and then everyone came over to my house, and Benj dropped by, and we drank tea on my front porch. And that was the day. The next day, I registered for all my easy CSU classes, though the registration was not so easy, XD. I then went in for chemo with Alan and discovered my red blood cells are like, did you know dying is fun? And I don't think it's because of the chemo either, because for a while they were doing just fine. Anyway, something is up with my red blood cells, but I feel about the same, so I don't know. Probably nothing to worry about. So yeah, then I got my 6th chemo dose. Only 6 more to go, ... Yay? But the nice thing is, because my PET scan came back positive, they've taken out the part of my chemo that made me take Benadryl, so I no longer get sleepy during the experience, which honestly makes it significantly better. Also, I must say, Alan has taken the title of favorite chemo buddy, and our conversation was, let's just say quite unorthodox for our conversations, XD. But as a result, quite good. He then drove me home. I watched some Attack on Titan. I watched this pretty well-done movie about being able to sell your time, watched more Attack on Titan, watched a so-so anime movie with Grace and Emerson, did some MBTI research, and then slept. The following day, my stomach did not like me at all. That was quite unpleasant. I read through part of Darty Narty's newest book, but honestly, it's kind of bad. I didn't think you could make a bad MBTI book, but the way it's formatted and composed, it's really hard to get concise information from it. So yeah, I haven't really touched it much since then, because I just don't know what exactly to do with it. Anyway, after that, I compared my personality stats with where I was a month or so back, and I have grown in both my FI and FE fairly significantly according to those results. Honestly, I was listening to a personality hacker about developing your FI as an inferior function, and I think I'm actually doing really well. All the things they were saying, I was like, oh yeah, I already do that, ... So who knows? Maybe I'm actually pretty well in that domain. After that, I had food, felt pretty bad even after having eaten, took a bath, read some more, took a nap, was feeling a bit better, read some more, and then slept. Upon the rising of the sun, I too arose and did philosophy. I then went to church, and at lunch, the conversation consisted of vying for Lily's loyalty, with the potential suitors being Johanna and Joe, though Sam was also later advocated as an excellent option. Basically, it was me, Joe, and Benj against Johanna, and it was a ton of fun, but honestly, Johanna held her own. I then went to D&D, did the D&D things, ate the food, but then I was very tired because steroids, and so I went home and took a nap. Once I arose, I did Phoneme, studied more philosophy, went on a walk listening to Personality Hacker, and then slept for realsy. Then it was Monday. I spent some time communicating with all the people for the Hot Springs trip, met up with Dylan and briefed him on MBTI stuff, in payment of which I received free food. Then Grace and I journeyed to Joe's house where Karina and him taught us how to do some swing dancing stuff. In general, I think I learned things somewhat slowly in the dancing department, but regardless, we got some stuff down. Then we did some karaoke on Joe's mini karaoke machine, and we also discovered it's a miracle I can sing as well as I do, because my note matching skills can be garbage, XD. It was around this point, as Grace and I absolutely failed at singing Idol in Japanese, that people began arriving and hence food was eaten and D&D commenced. That went well. I discovered very new and inventive ways to engage in skyship warfare, wall of force, but overall, a decent session. After that, we all just chatted for a bit, and then we went home. The next day in the morning, I had some conversations over Discord, read my anthology for a bit, did Phoneme. Neo and Sydney came over for a vibe session as they did more philosophy. I then met up with Toby, Rutgers philosophy guy, and talked for about 3 hours while eating super spicy wings. Like, holy cow, I was unable to form sentences with my mouth because it just burned. See, we went to Pizza Casbah, and last time Toby spotted me, so I was like, hey, I got you, and let him choose a thing of wings to split. And he checked in with me before choosing the jalapeno flaming ball of death wings, but I was like, how hot can it be? So I said, sure. It was such a mistake. They were so spicy. I think I drank 5 glasses of water to eat 6 wings, and smothering them in the ranch did very little to reduce the physical pain consuming those things brought about. But I did it. It took me over an hour of slow, agonizing consumption, but I ate all of my allotted portion. So yeah, that was honestly one of the worst meals I've had, so that super sucked. But otherwise, the conversation was good. We danced around some meta topics, and it ended with Toby being like, look, man, I don't usually say this because it takes a very special kind of person to actually benefit from grad school, but for once I'm going to say it. You need to go to grad school. ... Apparently reading the Blackburn Metaphysics anthologies makes you fit right in with the people crazy enough to get philosophy PhDs, XD. So yeah, we talked it over, and apparently there may be ways to just skip the whole undergrad side and go straight to grad school, even at prestigious places like Rutgers or Princeton. So from this point on, I'm tentatively considering doing such as part of my future. I mean, it's really unlikely I could actually just hack the system like that, but I may give it a shot sometime in the future, just in case it works, So yeah, that was our convo, and will probably be the last one I have with him for a while, because while it was nice to talk with someone on my level and all, our conversations weren't super productive. So I was basically like, hey, can we not talk unless I have a particular topic I want to talk about? And he was like, yeah, okay, sounds like a plan. So that was really cool of him. So yeah, moving forward, I just have Toby on tap, ... Once I got home, I then read some more of the Magic Diamond book, went on a very windy walk, took a shower, and then slept. I was then awoken to a mouse crawling on my head, so that was fun. But honestly, it was just kind of like, there's a mouse on my head, and then it scurried away. So I wasn't really affected by it, but I understand a lot of people would probably find that experience deeply concerning, ... However, after the mouse woke me up, I noticed Esther had texted me, because she was reading through some of her old diaries, basically saying thanks for being a good friend and still being around after all this time. So perhaps the warm fuzzies that made me feel just overrode the mouse thing, XD. The warm fuzzies that made me feel just overrode the mouse thing, XD. The next morning, I worked on applying for all the cancer scholarships I could, because if I already have cancer, might as well milk it for monetary gain, XD. Then I read more philosophy, Joe came over, and we had a windy walk and talk. But that wasn't the most enjoyable because the wind was strong and cold, so we ended up talking much more just sitting on the front porch. That conversation was also very different from the sort Joe and I usually have, and hence was also quite interesting and novel. Once we finished that talk, we went over to Wendy's, got food, and then played 2 Magic games where I just did horribly and Joe crushed me. Hence, after that, I was like, well, that was fun, but I think I'm socialed out now, so Joe went home. I then experienced back pain. I don't know why this has started happening to me, ... But I didn't do much about it, and then a great thing happened. See, for those of you who've been around for a while, I'm sure you'll recall Molly Miller, my oldest friend. We hiked a lot together. Yeah, so she recently just got a boyfriend, which, no offense to Molly, was quite surprising to hear. Let's just say Molly isn't your typical, sweet, feely woman. She's more like... Actually, as I think about giving alternative descriptions, I realize it's in my best interest to not do that. So I'm just going to not, XD. Anyway, a while back, I texted Cable and Molly, trying to catch up with the two of them, found out Molly had a boyfriend, and now the time had come to meet him. Hence, we had this lovely little text exchange. There's an image. I'm not going to narrate the text exchange there. And you can't get the explicit go-ahead to not wear pants and not do anything with that. So, that's a reference to the text. So I hit up Cable before we left, since I was carpooling from his house, and was like, yo, you still got kilts around? Hence, for the first time in my life, I wore a skirt. I wore a kilt, and I must say the world got a bit more breezy, especially in the frigid cold. XD, here is a pic of me kilted up. There's another picture. And I recognize you can see absolutely nothing in that photo, but whatever, ... And yeah, me, Cable, and his wife, Jessica? Judy? Jehoshaphat? Okay, I totally forgot her name. It started with a J, and I really hope she doesn't read this because she's an ISFJ and will be genuinely offended that I forgot her name if she finds out. I'm sorry, Cable's wife, if you read this. I really did enjoy you, but I can't remember your name for the life of me. Let's hope that doesn't come back to haunt me. Anyway, moving on, I rode with Cable and J to this tavern place, and they sat us out in our own private tent, which looked like this. Picture. The restaurant was honestly pretty fancy and more than pretty expensive. I paid $30 for my meal. $30! And it wasn't even good, ... DX. But anyway, after a bit, Molly and her boyfriend, whose name I also can't remember, we'll call him Da Boy, arrived and we started chatting. It was at this point, as the fancy food arrived and the two couples sat across from me, that I had this very strange, oh my gosh, I'm an adult feeling smack me across the face. Like, here I was, engaging in polite conversations about my friend's love life, of all things, over a meal that was costing me $30 and that I didn't even enjoy. When did I get here? This is totally the sort of fun time my parents would have had with their old family friends, or that you see in movies of grown-up get-togethers. I just found the whole occasion quite odd, and I felt as if I had this weird coming-of-age moment of sorts, as if I had found myself transposed into a reality I had previously thought belonged only to others, and yet I found the deed of its ownership in my very hands. ... Like, I initiated this gathering, and I mean, sure, my OG intent wasn't for either of the significant others of my respective friends to come, but otherwise, this was exactly as I had planned it to be. I, without realizing it, had willingly chosen this adulty activity, and I could blame no other... So yeah, that was weird, and I couldn't help but think about how I must seem from an outsider's perspective... But I didn't think about that for long because there was a Da Boy to interrogate. Though honestly, I didn't do that much interrogation. ... I mostly just listened to them tell their tales and then gave a brief recap of my own life things, because, you know, cancer. Always got to talk about cancer. Anyway, Da Boy was pretty charismatic and like a god physically. Might be going to the Olympics level good at running. So he was enjoyable and all, but I don't know. He didn't strike me as epic. He just seemed like a dude, not exceptional in either direction, but that's just how he appeared to me. So yeah, the event was good. As it got later, I was definitely wearing down on my small talk capacity, so I was glad when it ended. However, on the way back, Cable and Wait, it's Julia! Her name is Julia! Ha! Take that, selective memory. First try! Anyway, Cable and Julia got me going on theological topics like cessationism and hell, and so that revitalized me. Once we got back, Julia invited me to stay for hot chocolate, so I did, and then I proceeded to break down what was happening in their relationship and why with MBTI. It seemed like what I had to say really helped them make sense of their experience, so that was cool. And then, once that ended, I went home and slept. Oh, also, because I don't know when in the timeline I received this, Elkin sent this to me all the way from New Zealand, and I've actually been loving it. Another picture. 2 pictures. It's an Attack on Titan Scouts cloak, and it's super comfy, so I've been wearing it around basically whenever I'm in the house, and it's a bit cold. The next day, I read philosophy for ages, had a Foname break, helped Grace set up the dash cam in her car, and reminded her to check her oil. I swear she's going to forget for like 2 months and kill her car with neglect... Then we drove out to the Myers to begin the hot springs trip I organized. The car ride there was decent. Noah and Grace largely carried the conversation, and it wasn't about much in particular. See, I considered trying to go like old times and do a deep conversation, but I just didn't find the motivation inside me for that. Oddly enough, I think I've been converted to being normal in this regard, because I've come to often prefer small talk conversations to deep ones. especially in group settings. Like one-on-one, I still roll the deep way predominantly, but now that I have the feels, I can see the merit of the small talk conversations. They feel good. Like, sure, nothing useful is done, but a vibe is created and everyone gets to partake of it. And that feels nice. I think it's because before I was blind to the vibe and thus couldn't join in, that I found small talk so unfulfilling. But now that I can see it and join in on the weird voodoo dance, I understand where everyone's coming from. Still objectively pointless, Still objectively pointless, but do I really want to put in the effort to create and maintain a contrary, deep conversation vibe? I think not, at least most times. So yeah, I drove out there, and the vibe was decent. Not God-tier quality, mind you, but decent, ... And then once we got to Saratoga, we stopped at the one burger joint, which actually turned out to be quite good. Here's a pic of us doing that. Here's a picture. Just know Sam is always watching you. Always. From there, we went to the hot springs, and it was big cold. But honestly, that just made it so much better. Our hair all froze and honestly looked pretty cool, and Benj and I, with others joining in, did cold plunge challenges which felt real weird, but kind of good the more you did it. Like you would be chilling in the hot water beside the river, right? And then you would experience death. And then you would come back to the hot water, and it would feel like your whole body had fallen asleep, but spikier. Like it was just pins and needles across your whole body. Very interesting experience. We got everyone to join us for doing it at least once, so that was fun. Also, Johanna was a fairly regular participant. Couldn't just let Benj and I out-SE her, XD. Honestly, the spot by the river was really cool. Not only was it super warm, but the mist rising with the lights and just the more natural surroundings gave a cool aura. We all sang songs with varying success, and then that was it. We headed back after picking up some snacks, and the vibe on the way home was peak. It was also nice being in the front seat because I was kind of tired, so I didn't have to engage as much. But the roads were a real sketch driving back. Snow was blowing everywhere. Nevertheless, Benj safely navigated us home, and that was that. Here's 2 pics of the hot springs. Oh, and frozen hair. The next day consisted of me waking up, doing philosophy for a bit, and then meeting up with Amelia at the Alley Cat to catch up on her romantic life. And honestly, that was a very good conversation. She actually landed a really good guy by the sounds of it. An MBTI type analysis, if my guess is correct. Wink. Honestly, it was just really exciting to see Amelia in such a healthy and happy place. Watching FJs get healthy, I think, is becoming a favorite pastime of mine. XD. So yeah, we talked for 3 hours about all sorts of stuff, and then we parted ways, and it was great. After that, I got to recharge my social battery by slogging through philosophy reading for 3 hours, and then I did something even during the trip Alex could not bring himself to do. I danced. See, back when I was on the trip, the one activity I chickened out on was going swing dancing with the group. Hence, on this glorious day, I got to rectify that failure, and I think I may have genuinely reached Alex 2.1 or something XD. Like, it was a big step for me. So yeah, I just decided I was going to dance, and I was going to do my best to enjoy it, and it turned out I had a fantastic time. Like, swing dancing is just super fun. Who would have thought? The only thing I couldn't bring myself to do, though, was freestyle dance. That was still past my limits of TE overriding, XD, but nevertheless, I did all the rest of it, danced with a bunch of females I kinda knew, and it was great. On my way home, I almost hit a car. In fact, I would have hit him for sure if he didn't see me not slowing down in time, and so decided to pull forward. Thank you, nameless guy. You are awesome. So that was a big scare. And then after that, I went to sleep. As for yesterday, I slept poorly because I had bad night sweats like all night, so that sucked. But otherwise, the day was fairly uneventful. I chatted over Discord some, did philosophy till John was ready, then I drove him out to Shields, and we kind of just meandered and looked at guns and talked. Then he brought me in and out. We drove back. I went into a smoke shop with him because he wanted to buy some cigars. Very interesting vibe. Very chill and manly. Totally see why Matt Fradd is all about cigars, and not gonna lie, there's some appeal to the culture. And then from there, we very efficiently built my new D&D character, and then I drove him home. Before I left his house, though, I was given a Kindle from the Ratio people, which was really cool, and a Feel Better card, which was also mildly nice. Once I got home, I just sat and thought for an hour before eating some food, working on this life update, doing some philosophy, and then going to sleep. And then finally, as for today, I got up, went to church, socialized, played my new therapist D&D character at D&D, because Eldon be gone now, ... And that was a lot of fun. I then journeyed with the new friend group to Panera, ate food there, and then was about to join them for a card game when Benj texted me about when the ice cream plan was happening. So I rushed off to that, ate ice cream in the presence of the extended Southgate friend group, then came home and have been working on this email ever since. And that's it. That is the most recent rendition of what I have in fact done with my life. You're welcome. Yeah, I apologize. This was not my best work as a narrator. Sorry you all had to listen to that.